and certainly I think Pastor Linda had mentioned that I have had the privilege of knowing Dave and Rebecca for a little while, for a number of years actually, and have appreciated listening to their program from time to time on the radio, CHRI, and the wisdom that they bring to bear on the whole issue of finances. So, and managing our finances. So I have appreciated them and glad that we have the opportunity to come back to this tonight. Oh, I imagine part of the reason why you're back tonight is because you learned some things the last time we were together, and hopefully you've got your information there ready to continue learning tonight. So wanted to turn it over to them, give them as much time as possible, and thank you for being a part of our evening, and we look forward to what we can learn tonight, you guys.
Good. Thanks for having us.
Okay.
And I know, Mike, you listen to the show because, well, the ones you're on anyways, right? So
exactly.
That's good.
I just want to make a comment. I sent Alana 4 links that she's going to put in the chat. One is in regarding we talked about paying with cash last week and how there's a whole field of neuroeconomics around the pain that we experience physically when we put cash on the counter when we pay for something. So I did a little bit of research. I wrote a blog, so there's a link to that. There's one link to a podcast that we did on Valentine's Day about the financial date, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. There's a little blog about it too. The importance of it, because it's one of the very biggest things we encourage people, whether you're single or a part of a couple, to have is a financial date with yourself or with your spouse. And then the other article, actually, I found it was one of the most fun articles I've read about money in a long time, because I was looking for answers to that question we had last week that Dave and I have been trying to find answers for. How do you remain connected to your money if we go cashless? Like in this season, when some places aren't allowing us to pay cash for things, how do we stay connected? Because one of the big principles that we teach is if you want to get connected to your money and face your finances, it's touching your cash. You take it out of the bank, you put it in envelopes, you spend it till it's gone, and then you have no more left. You get rid of your credit card. So I was doing some research about that, and I found this really interesting article about economists and different people making a statement about whether they thought Canada was ready to go cashless. So lots of interesting stats in there, especially under spending habits and how they changed 5 weeks into the COVID crisis or situation. So anyway, that's what's there. Go look and take a peek.
Cool. But don't do it while we're doing this, because, it'll be distracting, right? So. Oh, you're muted, Mike.
Sorry. So the question is, I've seen this a few times when things like that are in the chat. Do I have to cut and paste those and put them somewhere else before the Zoom is done so that I can come back to them later? How do I access that?
Alana?
I will make sure that they are included in the bulletin, and I can also include them in an email as well, if you'd like.
You're the best.
Thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you.
I'm just, because I like to pray, I'm just going to pray, because I don't think we did last week. So
it was recorded. This is kind of like church though, right?
It is kind of churchy. Like it's okay to pray here, I think.
The pastor's here now.
The pastor's here, so I better do a good job, right? Father, thanks so much for this night and that we can be together. We do pray, as we always pray before our podcast recording, over the technology. We thank you for the technology, and we ask that you would sustain us so that we can remain connected and learn and connect the way you want us to tonight. I thank you for what you want to teach us and how you want to teach us tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Okay, so I'm going to do a screen share in a few minutes, so you'll be able to follow along a little bit. You did get some handouts, so we're kind of halfway through the handouts. we made it through what I call the soft part of money, the heart part about money last week. And this week, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts, the math side of things. So if you're not math oriented, don't worry. Stay tuned. It's all good. We will walk you through it step by step. You do not need to know much more than a few addition and subtraction things. So it's all good. We'll walk you through. If you are looking at a handout, either electronically or in paper, most of the kind of the back section of what we do is actually on the last page. There's a little chart where it talks about the snowball. We're going to talk about paying off debt and getting out of debt. But before we do that, I'm going to hit the button here, and I'm going to see if I can do the screen share and do that. Okay, and survey says, look at that. All right, we're good. So the just a little bit of review. 5 steps to financial fitness. We're going to create an emergency cushion. And last time we talked a little bit, we're kind of setting the stage last week for the real nuts and bolts here. So we're going to create an emergency cushion. We're going to eliminate consumer debt. We're going to find out what a fully funded emergency cushion looks like and what the difference is. We're going to invest or pay off the mortgage. And then finally, I mean, the end goal is really to have way more than we need to live on so that we can give some more away. And that's, even though we talk about giving, we talked about it last week on the front end and throughout the whole process, we want to have, in a sense, the ability to give more than we are now. And I always say it like this. Right now, most of us are giving a portion of the money that comes into our bank accounts to the bank. And I just like to move that over to giving that to wherever you want to direct it. And there's a statistic that I kind of keep front and center in my own mind. I read it about 4 or 5 years ago, and it came from the CRA statistics on the Canadian family and how they spend money. And at that time, and this is, again, 4 or 5 years ago, the Canadian family spent about 11% of their income servicing their debt, and about 0.6% of their income for any charity at all. So that's whether that's obviously with CRA, it's reported charity, but any charity across the board that's reported. And you know, the thought that struck me with that was wow, if we the church could reverse those statistics and say, hey, I'd rather give my 11% that I'm giving to the bank to service my debt to whatever charitable organization that I can, and you know, only give the bank the 0.6%. I think the bank, okay, they can have their 0.6. So that's part of my personal mission in doing the seminars, and what we do at More Than Enough is to go, I'm on the mission to see if we can reverse that statistic. So there you go. Reb, you want to talk about the financial date?
Right. So,
go ahead.
Okay. So last week, we were actually trying to figure out if we talked too much about this or not. We talked about the spending plan. At the end of our session, we talked about the spending plan, and I pulled out the t-shirt that said, plan what you spend and spend what you plan, that Daveism that he has, that merch that we have. The reason we want to plan what we spend is because we really want to spend less than we're making so that we have margin. And when we have debt, we want to take most of that margin and put it towards our consumer debt. So we couldn't remember how clearly we talked about this, but to create margin, especially in a couple, we encourage what we call the financial date. Now, some people don't like it. Some people want to call it a money meeting. We just call it what it is.
Because I like dating Reb any chance I can get.
Yes.
That's the honest truth.
So when Dave started coaching in 2008, I don't know if I said this last week, but I was very appalled, actually, because if we were called to anything and God wanted us to do something, money would be the last place I'd really want to go. That means we'd have to do what he was teaching. So up until that point, I took care of the finances, actually. We didn't talk a lot about money, if you can believe it. So then he started helping Lynn Fraser create this coaching program, and we started implementing it in our own life. And we started meeting every week for an hour, and we'd pick a time, put it in the calendar. A financial date is intentional. A financial date is a place where you talk about your plan and going forward. Last week we did talk about that. We made a 4 to 8 week plan. We said what's coming up in the next 4 to 8 weeks. We talk about those things. We talk about what was important to us. So if I felt I wanted to go out for a dinner or something with my girlfriends because I hadn't seen them in a long time, we'd talk about that. We'd accommodate that or not. And sometimes financial dates, especially at the beginning, can be a little bit tense. So we had to have some rules around the financial date. A financial date is not a place where we say, I told you so, even to yourself. So if you don't have a partner, a husband or a wife or whatever, and you're just doing it on your own, you speak as kindly to yourself as you hopefully would to someone that you were married to. Now, sometimes that's hard to do because we get ticked off, we get angry. One thing there's an acronym we use, it's called HALT, H-A-L-T. Don't have your financial date if you're hungry, if you're angry, if you're lonely or tired. We don't have financial dates after 9 o'clock at night because that's just grounds for us to have an argument.
Because I'm always hungry, angry, lonely, or tired after 9 o'clock. Like it's just, that's what it is, right? So
anyway, so that's just, so in your handout, I asked the question, components of a financial date. Well, you can put HALT down. Don't do it if you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. If you feel you don't have capacity, you have it in the calendar. We recommend you can put it in the calendar. Like, this is a time that you're not messing with, right? If you can put a dentist appointment in and you want to get your finances on track, your financial tracking and your time for this financial date is just as important as keeping your teeth clean so that you don't get an infection, so that you maintain good dental health. So why wouldn't we do that for our financial health? Well, there's a lot of heart reasons about why that is. And there's a lot of reasons around, I mean, they say hey,
we're even better than the dentist. I mean, the dentist says to, brush 3 times a day, floss, like
and we're just asking you once
we're
a
only
week.
doing once a week. Like, it's like, this is easy.
So the stat is like money is like the second highest or third highest cause of divorce. There's a lady named Gail Vaz Oxlade. She used to do writing and podcasts around money, and she echoes what we have come to realize. It's not the money. The money is a tool. Don't blame the money. It's how we behave with money and how we communicate about money. And let's just own what we need to own. Money is just money, and it's a tool to further God's kingdom even. But it's how we communicate and our emotional attachments to how we spend. What's important to Dave? I do not care about Princess Auto. He does. What's important to me is different. And it's talking about some of those things trying to understand what does he value and what do I value? And this is the importance of a financial date. You go listen to the podcast. We can answer all those questions. We even do a seminar on communicating and money with couples. So we could, if you really wanted to, we could do a session with you guys about that sometime. But that's neither here nor there. One of the ways you plan what you spend and spend what you plan is to have a financial date. A way you capture that margin, that $100, $200, $300 that you're going to put towards your debt that's extra on top of your minimum payments is by having a financial date and you finding a way to capture that extra money so that you can start this debt snowball, which we're going to teach about tonight.
So the first step is we just were kind of reviewed a few minutes ago, and in the whole debt snowball, and it is one of the key essential. It is like, you get this down, the rest of it is really easy. And what we've talked about freeing up some cash, in our example tonight, we're going to use $300. But the reality is if you can free up $200, if you can free up $100, whatever you can free up consistently, regularly, that's what you're going to use to start your snowball. And our experience again is get it started, just get rolling with it, just make it happen with whatever you can. And the reality is once a snowball starts to happen, we also find that somehow, some way, I don't know how it happens, but it happens every time, that the debt pays off even faster than the math says it should. And so again, some of the foundational pieces there are what we talked about last week: learning to communicate money at the financial date so that you can free up a little bit of cash. And tonight, again, we're going to use $300 as our example. And the emergency cushion that we're talking about right here in the process is just a little bit of extra cash. It's like insurance. It's as good as we are at planning our expenses. And this is what, again, we talk about in the spending plan that we talked about last week. You can't plan everything, but you can plan to have an emergency cushion. So if you're a student without a car renting, maybe your emergency cushion is $500. And, okay, that's all you do. The worst emergency you could have is that one of your friends gets married unexpectedly and you got to fly across the country to go see them. Okay, that's an emergency. Couldn't save for that, couldn't plan for that. Okay, that's what it is. Little test here, little show of hands. How many people think Christmas is an emergency? Show of hands. No, I don't see anybody. No, it comes around every time, every year, same time of the year. Not an emergency. How many people have had a Christmas emergency? Don't show of hands. I don't need to see them. But the reality is we do have those Christmas emergencies, right? So recognizing that as we learn to plan what we spend and then spend what we plan, this emergency cushion is some margin in our cash flow to allow that. So we want to build that up as quickly as we possibly can. So I'm going to give you a couple of ideas. If you have some ideas on how to build your emergency cushion, just use the chat box. Share it with the group here. It's really, we're going to learn something from each other. I'm sure we have some ideas, but the reality is there's all kinds of ways to build this emergency cushion. And I'm going to give you a deadline. The emergency cushion has to be built within 3 months. And the reason for that is pretty simple. You're going to have an emergency. If you don't have it built in 3 months, you're going to have an emergency in 3 months. It just is, it is what it is. So we're going to give you a timeline, build it in 3 months, and you can build it from, say, we're just at a tax season. Maybe you got a tax return. Hey, I'm going to use that, and I'm going to build it up to whatever my comfort level is. Now, this is not a savings plan. This is for a place to go so that you don't ever have to go back to credit. This is a place to go where when you have something happen and you're like, oh, shoot, I don't have the cash. Where do I go? I go to the Visa card. I go to the MasterCard. I go to the line of credit because I don't have anywhere else to go. This allows you to go somewhere else. And it's so important to be able to go to that place. So tax return, one way to build it up. We said we were freeing up, in our example, $300 a month. So we know we have 3 months. So we know we're going to have $900 anyways. If we can free up $300 a month, we're going to have $900 to put towards it. Maybe that doesn't get us all the way there. Maybe we want to sell some stuff, right? We all have stuff in the house that we probably could put on Kijiji, make a couple bucks. I actually had one of my clients, we were talking last night at our meeting, and she wanted to do some renovating, and it just didn't fit in their plan. So guess what? She got all the kids. They went through all the house. They were doing some kind of COVID spring cleaning, and they had just a pile of stuff in one room, and she started taking pictures. $580 in 2 weeks. That's wow. During COVID. So I don't know what she was selling, but $580 during COVID that she sold the stuff that they just went around the house and collected so that she could buy some paint and do the renovation that they wanted to do. It wasn't serious renovation, just some paint and some other things. So, there's all kinds of stuff. One of the ways that you can free up some cash in the very, very short term is if you're overpaying on your credit card, if you're paying like $100 to this one and $100 to this one and $100 to this one, and you never seem to actually spend less than $100 when it goes on the Visa, okay, we can draw that off and we can say, I'm going to commit to stopping using the Visa. So we're not going to use the Visa, the MasterCard. We've been doing our financial date. We've been planning what we spend. We don't have to do that anymore. And now we can go, all right, I'm going to have an emergency cushion. Now, I'm going to talk to the guys. Girls, you can listen, but I'm going to talk to the guys, because if you want to have a happy financial relationship with your spouse, build this emergency cushion and get it and maintain it. Make sure that's the one thing you do. I know I'm being a little bit, gender whatever.
I was like, what is he going to say?
But I'm serious. In the 15 years that I've been coaching couples through this process, whenever that emergency cushion gets topped up and is there, I hear a huge sigh of relief from the ladies. And it's 99% of the time, ladies. So I know how important this is to a wonderful financial relationship with my spouse when the emergency cushion is there. And it's proven over and over. So guys, real big incentive to get that up and to get that in place and to be able to maintain it.
Because I want you to imagine for yourself, I mean, this is what happens to us out in rural Eastern Ontario. We haven't got smart enough to really start our tire fund, but we go through a lot of tires. That's actually one area that we are really falling short on. We should just have a tire fund that we put money in every month. Anyway, it is really when I blow a tire or he blows a tire because we've hit another rut on the road and we go through more than you would believe. I can breathe a sigh of relief because I know that there's money there. And when I don't know where you guys are at financially, but how nice to know that there's money to pay for it and you're not stressing and you're not going to have an argument where you're going to borrow from what Peter is going to pay Paul in your finances. And it's just if you don't do anything but have this emergency cushion, it's really great.
So the key there, and I mentioned, pay the minimum payments on your credit card. That is a very short-term deal. What you're doing is moving money. You're arresting any kind of increase in your debt. You're just holding it steady for a month or two, not any longer than that, just a month or two to top up your emergency cushion to get it over the top. So if you're a family like ours, we have, 3 kids at home. We've got 2 cars. We've got, the lawnmower and the tractor. And, our emergency cushion has to be at least $2,000 because sometimes we have 2 or 3 emergencies all in a month. And that's okay. But we also have the ability to continue to top it up. And I'm going to say one thing about topping it up. And this is where that $300 becomes really important. And you're going to see that in a few minutes as we move forward. So 3 months, fill up your emergency cushion. And then, as we said, we're going to sell something to make it overflow. We're going to just do what we can to really get where we need to go with that. And note to self, this is the hardest part about the whole process. It is the hardest part. So when you're building your emergency cushion, share it with a friend. Share your financial journey and say, listen, I don't have to give you the details, but we're starting this whole thing with financial journey and we're doing a date and we're, okay. And we're building our emergency cushion. I have had more times than I can count a number of people who have said, you know what? And somebody said, oh, that's a great idea. I have it and I wouldn't live without it. Here's $50. Put it in your emergency cushion. Or here's $100. I want to help you. I know it's a little bit, you're like, oh, should I share? In this part of the process, if you can share with somebody and just say, listen, we're taking our finances by the, hold by the horns. We're going to make it happen. And Dave and Reb said that the first step is build this emergency cushion and we're working on it, but it's going slow and I got like 3 weeks left and it's not full yet. I tell you, you share it and stuff happens. It happens all the time. So that's my encouragement to you, to just fill it up. 3 months, that's what we're giving you. And then we get to celebrate. Somewhere in there, here we go. It's coming in. So we're going to celebrate. And again, it's really important throughout this entire process that we acknowledge the victories. And this one thing, getting an emergency cushion topped up to the place where you feel like, wow, again, if it's $500, if it's $2,000, it should never be more than $2,000. Just getting it to the point where you're like, okay, I feel like we're good to go. Let's start tackling debt. Because
But don't go buy a big screen TV for $2,000.
don't drain your emergency cushion.
No, yeah, share a coffee.
celebrate?
No, yeah, don't do that. Buy a coffee, share a coffee. Buy a donut, split a donut. I don't know. Do what you think you could, but celebrating is really important, actually, because if you don't have a chance to celebrate and enjoy what you do have, then we're missing the point also. So
Good.
we have to keep motivated on the journey.
So I think we mentioned not that long ago that this journey is more about the emotional heart side than it is, in fact, the math side. So if you're Dutch like me, and the whole point is actually to kind of get the math in there and do it, I actually take joy from that. Rebecca, on the other hand, does not. So celebration looks a little bit different between the two of us. But going back to the financial date, there's a cool, what better financial date do you have than to get together and say, oh, we got to celebrate. What are we going to do in our next financial date to celebrate this victory and to make sure that it happens? So that's so important, and we're going to just leave it at that. Now, in front of you have, and this is on the back page of your handout, this is the average Canadian family before COVID. I don't know what it looks like now, but this is the average Canadian family. A little bit of debt on Visa, MasterCard, a little bit on a Home Depot card, got a car loan, a line of credit, and a mortgage. That's kind of the average Canadian family, $250,000 worth of consumer debt or debt period. And there it is. And you'll see that we've got it listed out in terms of the type of debt, the balance of the debt, the interest rate, and then the monthly. And these are just the minimum payments that you need to make monthly. So this will hold the debt static. It won't increase or it won't decrease if you're paying that interest cost. So that's the true interest cost. So, okay, survey. How many years, in the chat box, how many years do you think it will take to pay off? Open up the chat box, type into the chat box, how many years do you think it'll be to pay off? We want a little survey here.
Let's see.
Here we go, 40 years. Okay, way to go, Candace and Dan. You're my heroes. Anybody else got a guess?
That's a long time.
25 years. Oh, you're guessing, the average bank counting on that you're paying for your house, just mortgage for your house, twice over. So if you buy your house for $300,000, the bank is counting on you paying another $300,000 in interest. Just saying, that's what they're counting on statistically. So we got 40 years, we got 25 years, we got 30 years, we got 20 years. So
good.
Great. I think we got everybody. Did we get everybody there? So cool. Well, good guesses. We're going to find out tonight. How about if I tell you that, not that you're all wrong, because you're probably all right, because, well, that's about how long it normally takes to pay off that kind of debt. So we're going to show you how you can pay it off a little bit faster, though, tonight, right? So here we go. The first thing we got to do, you know how much we love this, plan your payoff. When we talk about plan what you spend and spend what you plan, we also are going to just plan the payoff. So I'm going to just give you a little bit. There's a couple ways to pay off debt. And consolidating the debt into the mortgage and rolling it all in, that is not one of them, contrary to popular belief. I'm in the mortgage business, and I don't know how many times a day I hear, okay, I want to redo my mortgage and pay off all my debt. No, you're not paying it all off. You're just moving it from high interest to lower interest, which, by the way, is great. But the reality is you're not paying it off. And that's what we've been conditioned to actually think or say, that, hey, I want to, I'm here, the mortgage is up for renewal, I want to pay off all my debt. No.
And I'm going to throw in a heart issue and a scripture verse just related to this, and I'll be as brief as possible. One of our key verses at More Than Enough is Romans 12, verses 1 and 2. And is it Romans?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm like, oh, great. I always get confused with Hebrews. Anyway, Hebrews 12 is also good. But Romans 12 verse 2 says, don't be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind so that you will be able to test and approve God's good and pleasing perfect will is for you. And that non-conformity is part of this. This is a real practical way. When you hear someone say, oh, I put all my debt, how did you say? I got rid of my consolidated, paid off my debt. You could actually say, well, without being offensive, no, you haven't. And
go see Dave.
Or are you putting extra money on your mortgage then because you need to pay off that debt that you just consolidated? And that's just one way, one catch that we would encourage you to have. Understand what the world says and what the Lord says, and ask him the truth, even about the language around money. So that's my sidebar.
Okay. And a little sidebar of the sidebar. Don't walk around with a big stick hitting people on the head saying, you're not consolidating the debt, you're not paying it off. Like, don't do that. No, that's
yeah, you'll lose friends.
The reality is this is a shame-free zone. We talk about this an awful lot. There's a lot of shame around money. And often, again, the math makes sense to consolidate. That's not the point. But we've been conditioned to actually think, well, the debt's now gone. And the exhale of debt as you go through. So,
yeah.
What did Shelley say?
Shelley says bank always wants to roll the debt into the mortgage, interestingly. Right, because they want to make money.
Of course, right?
Yeah, that's a good point, Shelley.
So there, and again, that's the conventional advice is in a sense, the math makes sense whenever you do it. I mean, of course, you're going to pay less interest on a 4% loan on your mortgage than a 21% loan on your MasterCard. We absolutely get that. The point is that frees up the MasterCard to run it up again. And guess what? Again, that's what the current financial culture is if I free up all these Visa MasterCards, then, hey, we can run out and run them up again and do that. So we're not going to do that. We're going to pay it off, and we're going to keep it off, and we're going to learn that we can live debt free. So plan the payoff. Couple of ways to do that, and I'm just going to highlight here. We can do it based on interest rate. So, again, if we look at the interest rate and we say, okay, I'm going to pay off the highest interest first. So that's the 28% right here in the Home Depot. I want to pay that off first. I want to order my debt so that it pays off first. Then I'm going to do MasterCard. Then I'm going to do Visa, then the line of credit, and then finally down to the car loan and the mortgage. That's what we call the debt avalanche. Oh, I like that word, avalanche. And really what that means is we're just paying it off strategically based on the interest rate. And then the second way is what we call the snowball, and that's where we're doing it based on the balance. And we're going to take the lowest balance first. And tonight we're going to use the snowball, and here's why. The snowball is more based on the psychology around money than the math around money. And it's really quite a simple thing. If we were motivated by the 28% that we're paying on the Home Depot card, we would never not pay that off, because that's 28%. We would do whatever we can to pay that off. So the reality is we're not often motivated by the 28%. Now, if you're one of those people that is, use that, leverage that. But I'll use in our example here, if we were to pay the Home Depot off first at 28%, using our $300 a month that we've got freed up, we're not living on it, we're using $300 a month, it would take somewhere around 7 months to pay that off, wouldn't it? Now, if I pay the Visa off, then, well, it's going to take somewhere around 3.5 months to pay that off, or just over 3 months. So we want to get you to the finish line faster and quicker. So we're going to use the snowball, and we're going to show you how that works tonight. But there's no wrong answer here. Pay off the debt with the $300. Choose what works for you. But just remember that if you start with the Home Depot, there's a longer stretch that you got to make it through before you get to the victory that we want. So here we go. We take $300 that we have available from our cash flow that we've been planning what we spend and spending what we plan. We add it to the $30 and we keep all of the other minimum payments going. We don't miss any payments. We make those payments and we take that $330 and we stick it in together, and it takes us about 3 months to build it up. So we're going to just keep a running total here. It took us 3 months to build our cushion, 3 months to pay off the Visa, and guess what? We had an emergency. It's been 6 months, so guess what? At least you've had one emergency. I'm telling you now, it happens. And when that happens, what we do is we stop paying the Visa. We take the money that we would have. We take some of that $330, and in this case, because it's a 2-month emergency, it was really a $600 emergency. That's what happened. We had an emergency that was worth $600. It might have been 1, it might have been 2, but it's taken us 2 months to pause the Visa, to go get the money from our emergency cushion, to fill up our emergency cushion again once we drain it after we've had the emergency. So the process again is we have an emergency. Instead of going to the Visa, we go to our emergency cushion. We take that $600 that it costs us, whatever that emergency was, we take it out of the emergency cushion, and then it takes us 2 months to top it back up. And in the meantime, the Visa just stays static, paying the minimum payment. Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up if that makes sense. All right, we're tracking. Because we're going to go a little bit faster as we roll through, because guess what? It gets pretty repetitive. And this is the repetitive part that I love, because we get to celebrate.
Unfortunately, we couldn't send you chocolates through Zoom.
Yeah.
Because we usually give you chocolate when you come to a seminar.
For face-to-face. I don't know
So
how. Yeah, I know, Mike.
so
it's like,
I know.
can you
Go
imagine?
get some chocolate chips from the cupboard or whatever, and every time you see the fireworks, you can eat some.
There you go. So, well, we definitely, that's one of the virtual part we have to figure out, right? Last week, we actually had cookies at the beginning. I don't know what happened to those, but, you know, yeah, we had cookies. So, all right, we're going to move on here. So now it gets a little bit repetitive. So you can see we've ordered it. We've been paying it off. We're doing it. We're 8 months out, and we're now going to tackle the Home Depot card. So we take our $330. That's the $300 that we had from our cash flow that we've been diligently setting aside, and we added the $30 that was our minimum payment from the Visa. So once we do that, we have $330. Now we can add that to the $70 that we have as part of our minimum payment for the Home Depot. So add all that together and it comes to $400. You see, all right, here we go. The math is pretty easy. $400 times 5 months, that's $2,000. And guess what? During that time, we've had an $800 emergency. I don't know what it was. In our case, I'm sure it's a tire, because that's what happens in our house. If it isn't a tractor tire, it's a car tire. Well, I don't know what it is about tires, but in our house, that's what it is. So we added up. Now, one little caveat I'm going to pause here as we go through this. If you have any questions or any comments you want to do, remember to use the chat box. We'll stop and address anything as we go through here. So we started. We got the Visa paid off in 8 months. We now have 5 months on the Home Depot, 2 months for the emergency cushion, and guess what? We get to celebrate. So we're 15 months out. We've paid off 2 credit cards. We've filled up our emergency cushion. We're fully funded. We have it all the way back, and that's something to celebrate. And again, I'm going to pause here a little bit to say, if at the beginning, that person who you shared, I'm building the emergency cushion, let them know how you're doing. And you don't have to give specifics. You don't have to. But it is amazing how many people will cheer you on as you do this and as you go through. And it's just a real sense of encouragement that we can get from the community as we work through it. All right, so we're going to go to the next step. Oops, did I go the wrong way?
No.
Oh.
We got MasterCards next.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, now I'm really spoiler alert. Here we go. So now we got $400. Where did the extra $100 come from? Well, it came from the minimum payments on the Home Depot card and the Visa. So we added that to the 300 we already started. We're 15 months out, and now we're rocking and rolling, and it becomes natural. I mean, you've been at this for 15 months. This is actually now like, right, we're starting to roll. We probably made it through Christmas, and it wasn't an emergency. Maybe there's all kinds of stuff that happens over 15 months, and you've been able to navigate that. Maybe you got a raise in pay. Maybe you didn't. Maybe that first tax return you used for your emergency cushion, but the second tax return you didn't have to. You can actually use that for something fun or maybe to celebrate with, right? You can do that because now we're on we're just rolling with it. Now, if you want to throw it at the MasterCard or the other debt, feel free to do that. You can, that's cool. But really, we're just going to keep rolling it on with the money that we have here. So MasterCard was $5,000 15 months ago. It's still $5,000. So remember, we're keeping it static. We're not letting it grow. You want to make sure that it isn't growing anymore. And then you add the 180, so the $180 minimum payment to the $400, and that comes to $580. And guess what? It's going to take 9 months to pay that off. So then during that 9 months, again, probably an emergency. In this case, the emergency was somewhere around $800, maybe $1,000, again, depending on where that minimum payment is when you do it. So you're like, okay, we had a little pause. We took our money from our emergency cushion. We used it instead of going back to the Visa, the MasterCard, the Home Depot. No problem. In fact, if you're wondering what to do with those cards when you pay them off, well, part of your celebration might be cutting them all up, making them, put them in the barbecue, put them on make a little collage. I know that you can sell them on Kijiji for a couple bucks. They're little money maker too. But the reality is or call more than enough, and we will happily celebrate with you. Okay, so if you need a little plastic surgery, all of our coaches are fully qualified plastic surgeons, so they'll help you get rid of the plastic if you need to. So.
I just want to add a comment. I don't know if some of you feel like, okay, 26 months is over 2 years, and this has been a long haul. Dave loves a quote that has been attributed to a few men in the past. We have these discussions about who actually said it, but the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. This is not for the faint of heart, and it takes community. So the community you guys are in at Arlington Woods, you guys have been through so much already with your story the last few years and how you are community for one another. That's why sharing the story is so important. You'll feel like you just want to quit, like this is too hard. But as fast as we get into debt, it takes us double that to get out of it. So
don't scare them like that.
But let's be realistic. Okay. I mean, to me, I see 26 months and I think, oh man, that is just forever. But anyway, I need encouragement.
So here's another perspective on the 26 months. So let's just fast forward 26 months. If you don't start the process now, what's it going to look like in 26 months?
It'll be way worse.
It will, yeah, right? Okay. So let's just start, even like I said, even if it's $100 and you can consistently throw $100 out, then start it and just start somewhere today.
And because you're in a faith community, praying and talking to the Lord about your finances is huge. We can't share this piece with everybody because depending where everybody comes from. But if you are not praying about your finances and asking the Lord and seeking his face, if you don't know what scripture says about money, this is also a great time while you're starting to pay down debt to start talking to him. And we have some great resources we can direct you to if you want to do that.
So because the Red did that nice little interjection, and we're talking about God and the Bible and all of that, just so you know that, the Bible does say an awful lot about money. It says, there's 2,350 verses that talk about money and possessions. depending on which version you use, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. Jesus talked about money and possession more than any other topic. Over about half of his parables were about money or related to money. And God just basically knows that, hey, I would say his biggest competition is how we relate and how we deal with money. Because again, do we put our trust in God or do we put our trust in money? And so, as we talk about that from a faith perspective, this is the math, but the reality is God wants to get you out of debt as much as you want to get out of debt. And so, going back to those Romans verses that we love, don't conform to the pattern of this world, because the pattern of this world is debt. And God says, no, that's not my pattern. That's not the way that I designed it. And so, but that's just a great encouragement. I'm sure that you'll hear that from all kinds of ways as we talk from there. But let's jump back in. Make sure. Where are we, Reb? Oh, we're on the line of credit.
We gotta speed up now.
Okay, line of credit. Here we go.
Because we're already.
Oh, we got 10 minutes.
I know, but they have to ask questions yet.
Okay, we're done. Here we go. Line of credit. We're gonna keep the snowball going. So we'll add our $100 to the $580. 17 months, the line of credit is paid off. One emergency. We have one emergency simply because now we've been at it for 26 months, and we're much better at avoiding emergencies. That's the simple truth, and that's what we've found. So one little fun part now is after we celebrate paying off the line of credit, we get to talk about the car loan. So we've been at it 44 months, paying off all of our consumer debt. We finally got there. Our line of credit is done. We're like, celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. But while you've been doing that, the $500 a month that's been going on to the car loan was at a 0% car loan. So guess what, ladies and gentlemen, 44 months times $500 a month is $22,000. There's no interest on it. So you basically only have a couple months left and we're paid off. So 2 months left because we add 500 to 680 and we have $1,180 to put down towards the car to pay it off in 2 months. Boom, it's done. Car is yours. And now we pause just before you celebrate. You take that $1,180 and you put it in the car fund, because we know that the month after you pay off that car loan, there's going to be an emergency. You just know that that's going to happen. So before you celebrate and you get like all excited about paying off the car loan, pause 1 month, just let it ride, and then you can celebrate all the way and rip up that car loan paperwork and send it in, and you can get that paid off, and now you own the car outright. So 46 months in, we paid off the Visa, the Home Depot, the MasterCard, the line of credit. We own our car, and the only debt that we have left is on the mortgage. Woohoo! Here's where we're going to pause for just a minute, and I like to call this building our whoopee cushion. So there's a couple things. Remember, we're 44 months out. So it may be time to stop and pause and do a really big celebration, to do something special. Maybe the kids haven't been eating 7 days a week for like years. And, they're like, okay, we get to eat that extra day because, whatever that your strategy was to free up money. So 6 months, $1,180, $7,000 saved. That's a pretty good trip. Maybe the car does need an upgrade. Maybe there's something like that. Now you can save. We're going to save for 6 months, and we're going to do something special. It's got to be something that you just enjoy and do. And then we're going to just keep going. Take that $1,180, stick it in, automate it. You've been living without it for 44 months. You don't need to live with it now, and start saving it up. The goal is to get a fully funded emergency cushion. And this is basically 3 months worth of expenses. So you just look at your expenses, you know what they are, you've been having the financial date, you know what they are every month, and you just simply go, hey, multiply by 3, and let's save until we have that in our savings account. Now this can go in a TFSA, this can go in a high interest saving. I would not recommend that you put this in a something that's locked down. Don't put it in even in an RRSP. It's difficult to get at. This is just simply an insurance. It's really like self-insurance. Think of it as your own self-funded line of credit that makes you money when you're not using it, maybe only a little bit, but it makes you a little bit of money, and but doesn't cost you if you have an emergency. So that's what that is, fully funded emergency cushion. And then we're going to go back, and in our example, we're 62 months out. So we've been at this for 5 years. We have no consumer debt. The car is paid off, and we've been paying $1,000 a month on the mortgage. So that changes our mortgage to $173,000. So we went from 200 to 173 in the last 5 years. That's a little depressing, but there it is. So now we're like, okay, we're going to just keep plugging away. We're going to keep the snowball rolling, and we want to roll on and roll on. So we're going to double our payments, and that's where you might have to reorganize your mortgage. There's a 5-year window in there, and you might have put your mortgage with somebody that allows you to double up payments. Yes, you can do it. There's absolutely. And so if we do that in our example tonight, then we get this thing paid off in 92 months. So altogether, the entire debt, all $244,000, paid off in 12.8 years on $300 a month. And I want to really highlight that. We didn't ask you to come up with any extra money that you weren't already paying other than the $300. So it starts with $300, and we snowball that $300 all the way along. And I don't know, there were a couple people that were at 40 years and 30 years and 25 years. And guess what? We've done it on $300 extra a month in 12.8 years. Now, there's another number. I'll just end with this number because I think this is worth celebrating. That if we were just to say, okay, take that mortgage interest over the 25 years, you would have paid at 4%. So this is assuming that you pay 4% interest over 25 years. Your interest cost would be $115,612. The total interest cost paid during the snowball in the 12.8 years is $69,371. So you just saved $46,240 by freeing up $300 a month and applying it strategically to your debt that you're already carrying. That's worth celebrating, and that's kind of the end. So I know there's questions. I'm sure there are. If you want to unmute, Alana, I think you have the power for that, so you can do that. And I'll get out of the screen share here, and we can just do that.